Welcome to this In Conversation event. I'm Andrew Ruffler, Chief Executive at Professional Liverpool. When we were planning this event at the back end of 2020, we wanted to do something inspirational to try and kick off the new year in a real positive way. And working with our partners at Tate Liverpool, we were delighted when we heard that we'd be able to get somebody of the profile of James Timpson to join us for this. Of course, we're now mid-February and coming towards the tail end of another difficult period in lockdown for everybody. But again, the overarching message from us around this event is one of inspiration, allowing you as attendees to listen and immerse yourself in some online content at the start of the day that perhaps takes you away from that day-to-day drudgery, the groundhog days that we've each been experiencing over the last month and a half. It's content that we at Professional Liverpool have been known for over the years, albeit in a physical rather than digital format. And the team and I are absolutely committed to maintaining this quality of content going forward. Professional Liverpool is the City Region's professional community, and we aim to be that place where our members can continue to learn, connect, belong and grow, whether that's online like today or offline, hopefully as we move through the year. So to today's event, neither Tate Liverpool or Timpsons need any introduction as brands. We're all each well aware of them, what they do, what they stand for. But it's one of the reasons why I'm so happy, delighted that we've been able to bring them together on this call. We've got Helen Legg, Director at Tate Liverpool, interviewing James Timpson, CEO of Timpsons. Helen joined the Professional Liverpool board in November last year and is an absolutely fantastic addition for us. Her experience and expertise in the cultural sector across the country, which is so important to the success, and we've seen this over the last year, so important to the success of the City region, will be absolutely invaluable as we at Professional Liverpool move forward with our own strategy in the next couple of years. James needs very little introduction from me, and I do not wish to steal any thunder from today's discussion, but needless to say that we're thrilled that James is able to share his views on a wide range of subjects with us today. James is a Tate trustee and has special responsibility for Tate Liverpool. In terms of the running of today's event, I'll be handing over to Helen shortly. She'll be taking over from me to undertake the session with James. We have the Q&A function open, and I noticed that there's a question in there already. There will be the potential to ask James and Helen questions towards the end of the session, so please do feel free to get your thoughts down and we'll try to get those tabled and shared with James and Helen. The other thing worth mentioning that's worked well in other events that we've run during the course of the last year is if any attendees feel that they wish to share their LinkedIn profile on the chat function from a networking perspective, please feel free to do so. As I say, it's worked well with people who've wanted to network, who've wanted to share their details with other attendees on the call. So that function exists. Please use the chat function to do that. So without any further ado, any more delays from my side, I'm going to hand over to Helen, who will guide you seamlessly through this question and answer session with James. So thanks for listening, and I'll hand over to Helen now.
Thanks, Andrew. Morning, James.
Morning, hello, hi.
Hi. Good to have you here with us this morning. I know from Andrew's introduction that he's hoping that we'll be inspirational. However, I have to say the first question I wanted to ask you is perhaps not going to lead us into that territory, because I wondered if perhaps you could start by just reflecting on the last 12 months, the impact of the pandemic, what it's meant for your business, and perhaps start to touch on questions of recovery and how you think we might get out of this.
Okay, right. So it feels, in some ways, it feels like it's only been 3 or 4 weeks, and other times it feels like it's been 3 or 4 years. We're a retailer. We are a retailer that, unfortunately for us, you could probably do without. If you don't have to go to our shops to survive. When we closed all of our shops a day or two early before everyone else, we were told to, on March the 23rd, when we were closed, I remember walking out my office in Wythenshawe, switching the lights off, and then I switched the lights back on and thought I better take a photo because I might not ever come back here again. I thought, that's it, we're done, because we're a high margin, low turnover, high fixed cost business. I've been running the business for 20 years. We've had 20 years where things have generally gone in the right direction. Profits have gone up, number of shops gone up. We've bought businesses, we've done interesting things. I thought, we're done, we're finished. And then we went through a period of losing a huge amount of money. We were working everything out as we went along, like everyone else was. We recognised, we weren't in as bad a position as cruise ships and nightclub businesses, or galleries for that matter, but we weren't that far off. And we had 2 colleagues who died of COVID, 2 colleagues who I knew pretty well, and that was very difficult to deal with. I've always written condolence cards to colleagues when they lose a parent or a grandparent or something. I've never bought so many condolence cards in my whole career. So it's impacted all of my colleagues in lots of different ways. And right at the beginning, I decided that we weren't going to change the values by which we run the business. And we were going to, even if it costed us whatever, I wasn't interested in the cost. We were going to keep doing things by our values. So I topped it. I said right from the beginning, right, we're going to top everyone's pay up to 100%, not thinking that it was going to last for 12 months. So I'm now £11.5 million in my cost so far of topping up, but I still think it's the best money I can spend. And then we made redundancies. We closed some shops. We managed to get some deals from some suppliers, which helped us along, but we're okay. From a business perspective, we've got a number of shops open. So just to give everyone an idea, we're not just a Timpson business. We are Max Spielman, we've owned for 11 years. So our Max Spielman shops are closed. Snappy Snaps, which are a franchise business we own predominantly in London, they're closed. Johnson's and Cleaners is mostly open. And our locksmiths have been working all the way through. We have 4 pubs, they're all shut, sadly. So various parts of the business have been impacted in different ways. Our online business, although it's small, has actually done very well. But we've been bruised, we've been really bruised, and the scars will take time to heal, but we will be okay. And I think we'll be okay for 2 reasons. One is we've got a really strong culture, and the other is I've always run the business very conservatively. So we had a lot of money in the bank with no debt when we went into this, and we're still okay. So where we go from here, I'm always a positive thinker. I think good things happen to good people and good companies and good organisations. And I like to think that the hard work we've done over the last 20 years will help us get through the next 2 or 3. And I think really it's, when we get to this time next year, it still won't be normal. I think it'll take another 2 years. And I remember talking to someone who runs a chain of travel agents, and they were saying that 5 years ago, they did a whole exercise on what would happen if a pandemic came along. And what they said is, what their conclusion was, is it starts really quickly and it finishes really slowly. And I think that's what will happen to us. So we are now focused on the announcements of next week. I'm hoping that they're going to say that shops can open, or non-essential shops can open on March the 22nd. And then pubs and restaurants can open up towards the end of April. We've missed Mothering Sunday is a big, massive one for our photo business, so we're going to miss that. But my colleagues are desperate to get back to work. We're furloughing, we're doing all this flexi furlough stuff, which seems to be working really well. The number of colleagues who are testing positive has come right down, which reflects what's happening across the country. And, I've got a real sense of optimism, partly because I've been going around the shops and meeting colleagues, and things are sort of okay. And, in our shops that are open, actually doing in fact, yesterday was a really good day. We did well yesterday. But I compare how we're doing compared to my fellow shoe repairers around the world. And I've got a mate called Mark who runs a chain in Australia and New Zealand, and they do exactly what we do. And because they've had a successful lockdown where people have been able to return to normal activity, they are trading their socks off. They are double-digit figures up. So even if we get half of that, that's what gives me the comfort that we will be okay. But I think any leader of any organisation will look back at this time with lots of different emotions, but we will all know that we've been challenged and we have learned new skills, and we're probably, hopefully, better leaders as a result.
Yeah. I mean, your businesses are in different locations around the country. So the ones that are nearest to me are outside my local supermarket, not necessarily on the high street. But the high street's obviously really taken a bruising, with some really long-standing and large businesses having closed down during this time. When we do get back to the high street, it's not going to look the same. And I don't know how much of your business is based on the high street, and whether you feel that the high street really is in trouble right now. Can you see it? Can you see a resurgence of new businesses starting up on high streets around the country? And is that gonna reshape our experience?
Okay, so half of our shops are in high streets, and the other half are in supermarkets. So we sort of see it both ways. For the last 5 years, our supermarkets have been trading like-for-like sales much better than the high street. So this is, you're right, it's a trend that has just sort of been accelerated. When I was a kid, we used to live near Wilmslow, and I remember walking down Grove Street in Wilmslow, and there were shops like Rumbelows and there was loads of different shops that do not exist anymore, and that is a natural process. When my great-great-grandfather opened his first shop in Manchester in 1865, none of the shops that were there then are there now. So it is a process that is normal, but it's just happened incredibly quickly. My concern is where you've got big space, where you've got like a Debenhams or a big top shop that's closed, because that just takes out an awful lot of activity and sort of focus. So I think high streets in the long term, most will be okay. Most high streets will be smaller. Don't see a shop as a shop, just see it as a building that can be used for lots of things. We live near Chester now, and the centre of Chester has been really impacted by Cheshire Oaks and by lots of different out-of-town retail venues, including Liverpool One. Actually, Liverpool One's been really successful. But Chester will reinvent itself, I suspect, as more of a leisure destination. If you go to Altrincham with Altrincham Market, it's incredibly successful. Town centres are there to do different things now. It's where people will gather and meet and do leisure pursuits. So the food and beverage offers are incredibly important, as are libraries, theatres, cinemas, galleries. And it's not just about shops, it's about having lots of reasons why people go. And they're calling it a high street, or just call it the centre of town, where there are lots of buildings that do interesting things. There are, in Maidenhead, which I know is a long way from here, what they're doing is quite interesting. There's a big shopping centre in the middle, and I think this will be copied in lots of places that are already talking about it, where they basically knock down the whole shopping centre in the middle and either make it into a park or make it into accommodation and a library and a few shops or a cinema, because we just got too many shops. There are too many shops, and because people shop online and the cost of shops is expensive, the model doesn't work. But if every empty shop in Chester you could rent for £1, what would happen? Well, people would innovate, people would try things, people would open up shops selling books or watches or anything, and that's how you get innovation. And every 10 years there's a new phase of what's happening. So we had the mobile phone shops, and then we had do you remember those shops where you could put your feet in a fish tank and the fish would eat your feet? There's always new things coming along, but we just need to see what those new things are, and I suspect it'll be in food and beverage and leisure.
And do you think, yesterday in the newspapers there was there was news of certain proposals for what the government might do in terms of levelling up. What do you think the North needs if it's to revitalise its economy?
Transport is a big issue. The Metropolitan line is longer than the distance from Manchester to Leeds. But driving to Leeds, I've got loads of shops in Leeds. If I go to Leeds, I can leave at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's ridiculous. But in the middle of the night, I can get home in an hour. So I think it's a combination of the whole transport network needs looking at, as does the rebalancing of business rates, because our shops in the north have been subsidising lots of other people's shops in the south for 40 years. So I think as part of the levelling up, it's just the cost of doing business needs to reflect the economics of where you do business. And I would like to see that the majority of the capital investment that the government are going to make over the next 5 years is in the north, because the problem has always been is that when the Treasury do their calculations over the years and they work out where they're going to get their money back fastest, it's always the southeast and London. So that's why London southeast has got the investment, because they get the money back quicker. But when we're all equal in this country, everyone has a vote, every adult has a vote, and we're all equal. And I think it's only right that government should have equal spending, and that's how you level up.
Yeah, agreed. One of the things that I find really inspiring about Timpsons, and one of the things that we've talked about before, and I know that the question that's already come in touches on this area, is the way Timpsons works with its staff, the values it holds, the support that you give to staff, and especially the work that you do with ex-offenders. So you recruit from prisons and support offenders as they leave prison into the workplace, and typically then for many, many years afterwards. Could you talk a little bit about that, about how that began, about why you believe in it as good practice, and what it means for your businesses?
Okay, so one of the things I've always had this discussion with you and Maria at Tate is you use the word staff, I use the word colleague, and we've always had this debate. All my colleagues and all your staff. So our business is based on having a very strong culture, and we call it upside down management, which is we trust our colleagues to run the business in the best way they think is right. And as part of that, there are certain things we need to have in place to work. One is we have simple rules, which is you put the money in the till and you look the part, and that's it. You can do whatever else you like. So memos can be ignored, guidelines can be ignored. Just do what you think is right, as long as you abide by our 2 golden rules. And the other part of it is that we need to recruit people who have the right personality to thrive within our culture. So for us, a CV is a complete waste of time. We don't even read them. We're just interested in what's your name and what's your phone number, and will you turn up for an interview? And we'll talk. And if we think you are bubbly, fun, interesting, engaging, sparky, slightly odd, a bit bonkers, that's perfect. You may be the world's best dry cleaner and shoe repairer, but if you're miserable and grumpy, we don't want you. So we can train you to be a watch repairer within a couple of weeks, but we can't train you to have a different personality. So we're looking for people who have an amazing, bubbly personality. And the way we describe it is they're a 9 or a 10 out of 10. So everybody wants to work alongside someone who's a 9 or a 10 out of 10. No one wants to work with a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Then it's not very good, they're unreliable, they can't come up with the goods. The danger zone is a 6, 7, and 8, because they can do the job, but their best isn't good enough for us. So we're very particular on who we bring in. And one of the things we've learned over the years is that we can find amazing people that a lot of the time most other companies and organizations overlook because of their past. And the main area of that is what we're talking about with people who've left prison. So it used to be ex-cons, then it went to ex-offenders, then it went to prison, people with prison experience, and the latest one is people returning citizens. That's the latest one I heard last week. So it started 16 years ago, but before that, we'd always recruited people who'd been in and out of prison, fighting on a Saturday night. I remember going to Reading prison to pick up a guy called Ross 3 times because he was always getting into trouble with his drinking. But brilliant at serving customers and really good guy. So I was always quite comfortable with it. My parents fostered children, so I was always quite comfortable with prison because my mum used to take the babies to go and see their mums in style prison, and so it was all sort of quite normal to us. So when I got invited to Thorne Cross, which is South Warrington, to look round a prison, just because they were just inviting local businesses in, I thought, yeah, it'd be interesting. Everyone always wants to go and have a look in a prison. And the guy who showed me around, the inmate, 19-year-old young lad, I thought he was brilliant. He was a 10 out of 10, right personality. So I gave him my business card and said, give me a ring when you're out and I'll give you a job. Still with us. In fact, bizarrely, he's working in the shop nearest to the prison we first met him in. He's working in the Morrisons in Warrington. And so I thought I'd go and get a few more. So every Friday afternoon for about 6 months, I would just go around the prisons in the Northwest with the governor, walking the wings, looking for sparky prisoners and just talking to them about what their plans were when they were coming out and basically if they wanted a job. Then I ended up a training academy in Walton Prison, where we were training people so when they got out, they were ready to go. Because what we found is that when people left prison, they need to start working for us the next day. And we need to try and take away all the reasons why it could fail. And one of those areas is confidence and getting ready for work. So we've now got 7 training academies in prisons across the country. I've got 580 colleagues at the last count who we know have been to prison. It's probably more. And they're across the whole business. We've got directors, we've got area managers, which is a big role in our business. And they're judged on their success as a colleague and their kindness to other colleagues. And to us, I've been amazed that other organisations just haven't done it. They haven't worked out that there's some amazing people there. And our business is far stronger as a result because I've got so many good people. Yes, we've had some disasters, but you get disasters everywhere. And I think it is, I'm in a business where we're cutting keys and I'm employing burglars and armed robbers. So, from a marketing perspective, it's probably not, people would question it. But I think customers come into our shops now because of what we do rather than avoid us because of what we do. And that was never the intention. The intention was just to get really good people. But I think it's made our business more interesting. It's made it a kinder business. And when you go around the shops and you meet a colleague who's been to prison, often it's not normally once, it's normally 4 or 5 times, and they feel that they have become successful. And that, to me, as a leader, is brilliant.
And the other, you just used the expression from a marketing perspective. And the other unusual thing about Timpsons is that you don't have a marketing department. And somehow this story of Timpsons, the way you do business, has served a marketing purpose for you because people are fascinated by the way that you operate. So, yeah, why no marketing department?
We've never had a marketing department. We've never had a PR department. Whenever it comes to making graphics for the shops, I have a colleague called Peter, and Peter and I just sit down and do some scribbles, and then we just put it in the shop. So if you go into our Timpson shop, we never try and sell you anything. There's no graphics to sell you anything, really. It's just to talk about the culture, because we want our colleagues to see it and our customers to see it, because we know that our best currency is our culture. And I wouldn't want a marketing company telling me what my culture should be and how to communicate that culture. That needs to come from the leader. So that's why we just don't do it.
And with the work that you do with returning citizens, societally, that must have a massive impact, because at Tate Liverpool, we also work with a number of prisons, and the work that we do there is about helping imprisoned men retain links with their families, particularly with their children. So it's kind of teaching them how to run arts activities with their children. And the rationale for that is that if they can keep those family bonds together, when they leave prison, they're in a much better place. If those bonds fall apart, they have no support when they leave, they're on a fast track to offending again. So I guess I'm leading up to a question which is about the social responsibility of businesses. You obviously support Tate in your work as a trustee. You're involved in other charities. But what would you say about the role of UK businesses in a wider societal sense? What's the responsibility there? Is there a responsibility?
I think there are a lot of businesses that do amazing things. A lot of the time we never hear about it. But there are also some businesses that are just focused on profit. And I feel that those businesses are hollow and that they don't have a long-term culture that will see them through. And I think if you are going to be a business that is successful in the long term, you need to have values that are based on helping others rather than just making money. Because otherwise your colleagues will not want to work for you for the long term. If it's just about money, it doesn't work. I've got a number of friends who work in the city. I don't know any of them who enjoy it, because it's all about money and bonuses and power. It's not about actually helping people and creating things. I think government needs to do a lot more. I think also leaders, people involved with running companies need to do more. And it shouldn't be seen as a cost. It should be seen as a way of improving the business. Because one of the things, we are quite philanthropic, less philanthropic this year for obvious reasons. But I think the best way that we help is by helping our colleagues. So actually, when you talk about helping others, our primary objective is to help our colleagues. So that's why we do lots of work around mental health support. We have a loan scheme. We do dreams come true. We do free holidays for people. You get an extra day off when you become a granny or a grandpa. We can do pet bereavement days, all this sort of stuff. So You've got to help your colleagues first. But I also think that government can incentivize businesses to do more. And so, for example, I would love any business that employs over 500 people needs to have 2% of new recruits coming through disadvantaged backgrounds, with care leavers, ex-offenders, veterans, long-term unemployed, disabled people, however you cut the cake. Because if you ask any business that does what we do, we're not just people from prison, but with veterans or with lots of different groups, they will say it really adds to the business. Commercially, it makes them far more successful and sustainable. And I think a number of businesses know it's probably what they want to do. They either don't know how to do it, or they maybe just need a bit of a nudge through the tax system or through some other sort of form of government manipulation.
Super. In about 5 minutes, I'm going to hand over to Andrew. So if you're listening and you have a burning question, now is the time to start typing it into the Q&A box. But a last question from me, James. There's been a lot of talk in this period about acceleration. So, digital businesses, we've seen fly, people's kind of familiarity with digital. We never would have had this conversation online a year ago. We would have met in person in a space with the audience present. We've also seen a lot of talk about, the Great Reset. How can we do things differently going forwards? A lot of talk about environmentalism, given that, possibly one of the factors behind the pandemic is our closer proximity to the animal kingdom. Are there lessons to be learned from this period? And, if you're talking to governments, what would you be recommending that they really think hard about to help us avoid getting into this situation again, but also to capitalize on the many changes that this year has brought about?
I mean, if you go into Waterstones in 12 months' time, there are going to be so many books about COVID and what people have learned and what the future looks like as a result of COVID. And some of that will be absolutely spot on that's happened as a result of COVID. A lot of it is just what happens in society generally, and what are the trends that were going to happen, maybe just have happened a bit quicker. I'm just going to give you two examples. One is around community. I think people will value their communities a lot more. And from the fact, helping neighbours with their shopping, to shopping at we have a little community shop down the road from here, and it's never been busier, and it's become a really successful part. So I think community will become, I like to think, far more relevant to people. Rather than just living somewhere, they live in a community. And the other is appreciation of the public service that we get. I think lots of people took and take the public sector for granted. And I think people recognise now, certainly what's happened with the NHS and science getting us, the vaccine, will give people a bigger appreciation of the services we get through paying our taxes. And so maybe people will be more willing to pay their taxes rather than do all these wheezes and schemes and funny stuff to get out of it. So that's my hope, that people will embrace their community more and be happier to pay their taxes and pay more taxes, because we get a pretty good deal from our public service.
Yeah, agreed. I will hand over to you at this point, Andrew, because I can see there are questions coming in, but happy to jump back in again as and when you need me.
The questions are flying in, as I think we would have expected. But thank you both for that really, really insightful discussion. There was one question I was just going to add. It was sort of linked to Helen's last one, but it was also picking up on James's comment about the fish eating feet businesses, which I'd completely forgotten about, but it struck me as, what an opportunity that is again. No, it was around innovation in business. And I just wondered, because obviously Professional Liverpool as an organisation over this last 11 months has had to evolve. We've gone from a business where 99.9% of our activity was in the physical space to 100% of it being in a digital space. I just wonder, from your perspective, James, where you see innovation in your business in the future, in the coming years. Is there anything that you could do additionally in the world of key cutting or watch repairs or shoe repair. Where is innovation for Timpsons?
Well, part of me doesn't want too much innovation, because the cost of introducing new things into a business the size of ours is always really expensive. But you also want to understand that the reason why we managed to survive when all of our competitors have gone is through innovation. And essentially it's by doing two things. One is by doing what we do better. And so, for example, let me give you an example of car keys. Okay, car keys may not be something subject that interests many people, but we're really interested in car keys. We're spending an awful lot of time finding ways that we can cut more car keys, we can get more customers to come to us to cut car keys. Okay, we've got a whole team on it, and that to us is a really interesting thing that we're trying to do. But the other part of it is to find new services to add into our shop. So we have this box that's not going to change size, but what we can do is put more things in that box and train our colleagues to do more services. So that is really what we're about, is adding in. We're doing a lot of integrating our photo skills into the Timpson shops. We're also interested in ID, and I'm really interested in verification. So you can prove who you are. You need to do it in person. And because there's basically hardly any post offices left, we think we can have a role to play there. And I'm also interested in developing our direct businesses. We have a number of businesses where we don't serve customers. We have lots of kiosks and vending units and this sort of stuff. And that and the online business have been the most robust during COVID. So it's sort of given me a renewed enthusiasm to keep pushing on with those as well.
Okay, good stuff. I'll try and go through these questions. Some I've just had a quick look, may have been covered in part during the discussion, but I'll pick them up anyway. The first one came right at the start, and it was in relation to ex-offenders. And as I said, yourself and Helen have covered a bit of this. I suppose the key element of that question that's in is, what's the highest position someone has reached within your business since being hired as an ex-offender? I suppose that's relating to career progression within the firm. Anything you want to comment on that, James?
Yeah, so I won't give any names because I don't think it's fair, but I have a director who I first met in a prison. And I have 4 area managers who are, an area manager is the main role in the company. They probably have 100, 120 colleagues who are under their wing. And 4 of our area managers we first met in prison. And they're brilliant. And their colleagues know that they went to prison. There's nothing, they're not hiding anything from them. We have 3 colleagues in our finance department who've been to prison, which I always think is a real test to see how robust your willingness is to do this. Because 2 of them are there for white collar crime, and again they make great colleagues. So yeah, I mean, one of the things now, because we've got so many people who've been to prison, I don't really know who they all are, and I can't remember where they all are, but I do know the senior colleagues, because we just judge people on what their smile's like and how they're doing in the business. But yeah, it certainly hasn't hampered anybody's career prospects by going to prison. If anything, if you send us a CV from HMP Walton, it's probably you're more likely to get an interview than if you're from somewhere else.
Yeah, good stuff. A couple of questions are fairly similar, and they're around the culture within the business. Carl Edwards and an anonymous attendee have both talked about your team culture, sense of community, and the first one is around making sure you can keep your colleagues upbeat and motivated. The second one was tips on maintaining teams when working remotely at home or furloughed. Again, from experience over the last 11 months, James, any thoughts on that, keeping your colleagues upbeat and motivated?
Okay, so good question. And I wouldn't say, when we talk about communication, I've never met an organisation that says that everybody communicates brilliantly. You'll always have people who say, no one ever tells me what's going on. So the majority of our shops have 1 colleague working there. So we've been used to remote working for a long time. And the way we do it is through lots of communication. So for example, I do a Friday video that goes around to every colleague every Friday. I never forget, and just telling everybody what's going on, and I never exaggerate things. It's positive, but it is honest. But the main way we do it is all of our leaders get judged each year not on their profits or their sales figures, but how happy their colleagues are as them as their leader. So what happens is, lots of businesses do these sort of staff surveys or whatever you call it, hundreds of questions. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? We just do one question on the happy index that goes out in April every year, which is on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you with your boss? And so if you take our area managers as they're the main people within this, if they get a bad mark in that, it's not good. It is not good at all, because this is how they're judged. They are judged on how brilliant they are as a boss. And the way they do that is by being visible, by helping people, by being inspiring, not being a pushover, but knowing their colleagues as individuals so they know what they can do when things are going wrong to help them, and also ways they can inspire them and say thank you when things go well. And essentially that's how we run the business, based on the happy index. So our area managers, the night before they get the results of the happy index is like the night before A-level results day. It's a big deal, a really big deal, because they want to know how they're judged. And again, none of our area managers ever get demoted or fired because of poor profits or poor sales. They only lose their jobs if the happy index is bad. And the reason why there's normally two reasons why they don't do well. One is because they don't get around the shops and they don't see the colleagues. And the other is they don't do what they say they're going to do. And it could be really little things like, you said you'd order me a new apron and it didn't arrive, or you wouldn't, I've chased you 3 times for my overtime payments and it hasn't been sorted. That's how people lose trust. But an area manager's job is to be the best boss their colleagues have ever had. And remotely, or whether in the office, doesn't matter. It's about communication, knowing your people, and being kind.
Yeah. Have you been doing a lot of these type of things, Teams and Zooms, during the last 11 months?
For the sort of the teams that run the business, we started off by doing lots when we were trying to work out what was happening and what all the rules were, closing the business down, then reopening. And now it's very much, I let everyone get on with it because they all know what they're doing. Yeah. But I spend a lot of time on the phone. I probably prefer being on the phone. And because my colleagues, we've worked together, most of us, for 20 years, we all know each other really, really well. And everyone just gets on with their own thing. But when we're not sure about something, I'm really keen to get everyone on a Zoom call or on a Teams call, just talk it through until we get an answer. But I'm okay if we don't know what the answer is, because we just won't do anything. We'll just sit on our hands until we know what the answer is. But I always worry about making a decision when you don't know what the answer is. I only make easy decisions.
Okay, thank you. This one's a quick one before I move on to the next one. How many staff are employed by the Timpsons organisation?
We have no staff, but we have 4,500 colleagues.
Oh, great.
And virtually all of those colleagues are full-time.
Okay, and moving then swiftly on to the next question. This is a real change of tack, but very important given Helen's involvement in the call. How does art fit into your life, and what drew you into supporting Tate? Okay,
so as all these things, it's a bit of a random story. I was in a bar with Tom Bloxham, and he was a Tate trustee, and his term was up for, he had to sort of step down after his term. And I've always been interested in how organisations work, and whilst I failed my art O-level, by the way, which is probably one of the best ways of getting a job as a trustee, because I'm I'm the commercial person. But Tom said, I think you'd really enjoy this, and so I applied, and I have. So I look after my main role is Tate Enterprises, which is the business of Tate, which is the shops, the restaurants, the online business, and the events booking side. And it's run as a separate business under the Tate umbrella, but it's a separate thing. So I sort of got stuck into that, and they're a wonderful team. We've got a group of non-execs, and I really like them, and I feel that we've really added to everything. And also, I see my role as being able to, when Helen wants to talk about something that is worrying her or is not sure what the answer is, then I'm here for her, and also Maria and Vicky down in London as well. So whilst I've learned a lot about art, I didn't know much about art. I'm absolutely terrible at art, but I think as an institution, I think it's a wonderful organisation. And the great thing, when you go into the Tate stores down in London, where all the art is stored, you all own that. That is the national collection. So 1/67th millionth of every painting is yours. And one of the things I would love, if I was ever Prime Minister, what I would do is that every child born, I would give them, that they would own something in the national collection, whether it's at the V&A or whatever. And although it wouldn't be sitting in their bedroom, they would own, so that people realise that this art, this history, these artifacts are yours. And that's what I think is important.
Is that sort of like adopting a penguin at Chester Zoo?
Exactly. I've actually, when I thought about it about a year ago, and I actually printed off the penguin Chester Zoo thing, thinking, how do we do this? How can we find a way of doing this?
Helen, did you want to add anything at that point around the role that Tate Liverpool plays in the Liverpool business community?
Well, I mean, I think the thing I would really like to say is that when times are more normal and we get into the gallery and open it up, we do corporate breakfasts, usually 2 or 3 a year. And I would love the people on the call to, feel they were welcome at one of those corporate breakfasts. So usually we're presenting the work of a local business that has helped us in some way. The last one we got a chance to do before we locked down was with Arup, and Arup had sent some of their technical experts to a show in Paris that we were bringing to Liverpool, and they digitally scanned everything and built us a model pro bono of how the work in this exhibition could work in our gallery, which saved us an enormous amount of planning and messing around during installation, moving things. So it was phenomenally helpful and a real eye-opener to the way in which we might do things in the future. So there are many ways in which businesses support Tate in ways that are often interesting for them and for their colleagues rather than employees. I'll use James's word. I'm learning, James. So that's really my shout out to everyone on the call. Come along to one of our corporate breakfasts when we can get them started again.
Yeah, and hopefully at Professional Liverpool and working with yourself, Helen, we'll be able to do more of this kind of stuff. I'm very keen to see how we can develop that relationship. Just going back to the questions, we've got one from Phil Adams, who, like Helen, sits on the board of Professional Liverpool, and I think he's involved with Tate Liverpool as well. So first off, he says he's enjoying it. He also wants to apologise to James because the last time he'd met you, he had a lot of wine. But his question was, what does James think should be done about the potential lost generation of young people in terms of opportunity, jobs, education? I think this is particularly talking about, again, this period since March last year and whether there's going to be an impact on young people and what business can do to support them.
I think it's a real problem. Our youngest daughter, she didn't take her A-levels. She's managed to get to university. She hadn't had a university experience. She's sitting at home, online lectures. I think my real problem is with those young people going through education who haven't had the support from their families and have been just lost out on so much learning. Will they be known as the Corona kids in 20 years' time? I don't know. But this is where you need a really strong public sector initiative to help these people catch up. And I also think employers need to understand that maybe this will help, that we won't all be looking at what people's exam results were. We'll be looking at them as an individual and seeing what their personality and an opportunity is, rather than just looking at the textbook factors that we used to recruit people for. So I think businesses need to be just wary that people may not have got have learnt all the skills at school, university that they would normally see, but it doesn't mean they're not great potential colleagues. So I just think we just need to be open-minded, but I also need to think that these kids have, in some ways, got a wonderful opportunity because things have changed so fast that as businesses now, we need so many of these young people who understand how technology is changing. So whilst I think it's difficult, I'd like to think longer term there are actually a huge amount of opportunities for young people, but I am concerned about it.
Okay. I'm just going to do 2 more questions, I think, just looking at the time. Are you okay to field a couple of further questions, James? We've got the time, haven't we? I'll take one about this is succession planning. So it was a question that came in again fairly early on in the talk. Is your father still involved in the business? And this is coming from somebody who had a family business, and about the transition from him to you within the family business. So this is around succession planning, James.
So yeah, my dad is the chairman. He's 70, nearly 78 next month. And he does less and less. He still likes going around the shops. He goes to the office in normal times. Probably pre-COVID, he was doing a couple of days a week, something like that. And he's great. We've worked together for 25, 30 years. And the succession, the transition has been, it's felt pretty smooth, but the business was a lot smaller. When I joined the company, it was I used to know everybody, when everyone's birthdays were. I'm a big fan of succession planning. I think it's really important. We do a lot of it in our company to make sure that we've got people slotted in for various roles, and to make sure that if we haven't got someone slotted in, we are developing people to get into that slot. And it's one of the things I've been talking to Tate about. I don't think Tate is strong enough on succession planning. And then you talk about the future. We've got 3 kids. If they want to come in the business, fantastic, but they've got to be really good. It's not for everybody. It's long hours, lots of traveling all the time, going to seeing shops, and but it's like anything. If your personality and ambition fits with what you're doing, you'll love it, and if it doesn't, you'll find it very difficult. And none of us want to put any of our kids in force them into things that they won't be their best at. So succession planning for me is really, really important, and I think most organisations are crap at it.
Good answer. And I think that the final one before we wrap things up is more a personal one for you. It's around, what things do you do to switch off? Do you do meditation or mindfulness? This is as a busy CEO and trustee. So what do you do personally, James, to try and switch off?
I like running and doing fitness, but I'm sort of either on it or off it. I love socializing in normal times. I love going on holiday. I love skiing. So I like basic outdoors. I'm not an indoors person. I'm an outdoors person. And I like learning. So I find it fascinating meeting people, learning new things, reading books, watching things. So I like learning. I don't like being entertained. I like learning.
Good stuff. Helen, anything else that you would like to add at this point? Otherwise, I'm sure we could wrap things up, couldn't we, over this next 10 minutes?
No, I mean, it's just a thanks to James from me for being, everybody can see what I'm lucky enough to have in a lead trustee for Tate Liverpool, and he does bring inspiration to the organisation, and he does help me to think outside the confines of the cultural sphere, and I find that really helpful. So yeah, big thanks from me to you, James.
Well, I'm still nagging Helen for us to have an Irish art, an influenced by Ireland exhibition on at some point before my term is up.
It's definitely going to happen. And in fact, our current exhibition has a whole section on Ireland in it. Don McCullen's photographs of the Troubles, which are really worth looking at.
But it's an interesting comment, that, because I'd seen in the last couple of weeks that both Steve Rotherham and Andy Burnham had and continue to try and strengthen our links with Ireland from a business perspective. I think it's a very important link, that one, isn't it, that we need to maintain and strengthen in the years to come. Just from my perspective, thank you to you both. I thought it was a great conversation. It's covered a range of different subjects which we wanted to, and as a lot of the comments in the chat have said, it is inspirational. It has been inspirational. It's a good start to the day. It's what we wanted from this session, because I think we can all go back to our day-to-days. It's half term, otherwise I would have said we can all go back to homeschooling. but it's half term and we go back to this Groundhog Day as it is at the moment. But I'm really pleased with how it's gone from a Professional Liverpool perspective. So thank you, James, and thank you, Helen. And to the wider attendees, just to make a note that there will be many, many more of these throughout the year. We're hoping to continue, certainly short term, these online sessions. They work so well. They give a good platform for us to get some good speakers out to you as members. But please do keep an eye open for those physical events when they're allowed to come back on stream. I think we're all waiting for that opportunity. And maybe we could have one in Tate, Helen.
I'd love to do that.
Great stuff. Okay, so thank you to everybody, and I hope you each enjoy your day.